Hi, everybody. Hi. Welcome to our beautiful center, the Ventura Center for Spiritual Living. I'm Reverend Bonnie Rose, and I'll be here facilitating this service today, guiding us all through this process. And as you know, we're here to honor the life of Jim Jelinski, who was born on March 14th, 1939, and passed away on December 25th, 2017. And I generally tell people that the purpose of memorials, in my opinion, is threefold. First, as I said, we honor the life that was, but we also recognize that death and grief is a process and that we're moving through it, and so we move through it together and support one another as we move through it. But to me, the most important aspect of a memorial is to recognize that life is eternal and to celebrate the new life that Jim has in a new form. So we'll be moving through all three of those things through music and prayer and listening. And we'll just go ahead and support one another through this whole process. I want to go ahead and invite you to please turn off your cell phones to start. And have we had Somewhere Over the Rainbow yet? Let's go ahead and play that, and we'll just meditate on that, and then I'll lead us in prayer, okay?
Okay, this one's for Gabby.
And let us turn within and pray. I invite you, if you like, to close your eyes. And we'll take some deep breaths together, anchoring and centering into this beautiful space that we've created through our intention to be together. We breathe in and we breathe out, and we become present in this moment. And in this moment, we recognize that there is truly only one eternal life. Some of us call that life God, or higher power, or spirit. Today I choose to call it love. For I know that love has assembled each of us here today. Love for life, love for Jim, love for his family and his other loved ones. And so I trust that our time together here is anchored in love, that love guides us in what to say and what we hear and what we feel. That truly there is only love, and we are a part of it, and we are fully aware of that now in this time together. And so I'm so grateful for this awareness. And with a spirit of gratitude and love, I breathe in deeply. And then exhale once again, opening my eyes in a state of love with what is as it is. And so it is. Thank you. We're going to start with 3 speakers who are doing the eulogy, and that's Alexandra Dumas. Is that how you say that? Okay. Okay, Alexandra Dumas, Jeff Jelinski, and Jim Jelinski. Hi. I'm going to invite you to speak right into the mic because they're taping it. Okay, excuse me. Thanks.
Grandpa, you had the biggest smile and the biggest heart. You cried when you were happy, sad, and just for about everything in between. You thought that every place we would visit was the most beautiful place ever. The park was your happy place, and every dog instantly fell in love with you. I lost count of all the walks to Pettit Park we went on with Buddy. You never stood up straight, and I can only recall one time when you weren't wearing sweatpants. You got so worried if any of us went too far out in the ocean when we would go boogie boarding. You always fell asleep with your mouth open. You always put way too much cream in your coffee and had a few too many cups. You loved chocolate and anything that had potatoes in it. You gave the tightest hugs and always said we were growing up too fast. You always said I love you at least 3 times when we parted ways. My last memory of you is your big smile, dancing, an extra tight hug, and 3 I love yous. I know you're up there playing ball with Buddy and dancing. May we meet again.
Dad, I miss his eyes, his voice, golfing and lunch with him on Fridays, hearing his belly laugh as our dogs lick his face. In so many ways, it was not until much later in life when I began to appreciate many of Dad's qualities. The name Jelinski means the quiet one, and I used to tell my dad he was a Zen master. His quietness, his simplicity, compassion, and being completely in the now all the time. In fact, I used to joke to him about his short-term memory issues later in life and how he should look on the bright side, as it really kept him only in the now all the time. He kept things simple and was very content, and I feel very comfortable being with him in total silence, just sitting in the backyard enjoying the sun and nature. We did not need to talk, just being together was relaxing. Dad was also a dog whisperer. His tenderness and compassion really showed up with animals, and he was revered in the dog kingdom. They understood each other, and you could see in how they looked at each other, their connections. I think it was hard for him to show his feelings to and for people. He kept a lot inside when it came to dealing with humans. But with dogs, all barriers came down, and you could really see his inner self come out. He was all compassion, love, smiles, and pure joy went around our 4-legged friends. But then dog spelled backwards is God, so I can see why. I am also so grateful for him as my teacher and role model, much of which I only realized later on in my life. For as I look at myself now, I can't say I inherited so much of who I am from him. It was more of what I picked up over my life by just being around him. I didn't really understand this until I began to wonder about my own values and habits and how I got them. I'm very blessed, for much of who I am today and have passed on to my children is because of him. They now can take the same and pass it on to all they meet. It is only through this passing on of love that we can change the world and make it a better place for all people and for all time. But over the past week, after thinking on many things, I mostly find it very interesting and want to share how when those we love leave their bodies and make their transition, it is then that we really begin to feel them, and so much more than we did before when they were here in physical form with us. I know I felt this way soon after my grandfather Walter and grandmother Helen made their transition, and that was over 22 years ago. I can feel their presence and talk to them as if they were right here, and I think of them often and they feel so close. It is strange that sometimes I feel more in touch with them now than when they were in their body. That shift has already started taking place with Dad, and I think most of us will start feeling it more and more if we allow it. It is as if they have moved just a little and shift from our minds to our hearts. The body is now gone, that tangible form, and the mind cannot grasp this well. So the heart, which can and does, takes over for us. So look to your heart. It is here in our hearts He will stay with us as all our loved ones do. It's beautiful because we can still talk to Him and feel His presence whenever we want, but mostly it feels so good knowing I can never lose Him again.
That was awesome, Jeff. I would like to thank you all for being here. I should put my glasses on so I can read what I wrote. Coming to our celebration of life for my dad and taking time to pay tribute to his life. I especially want to thank my dad's two sisters, my Aunt Judy and Rosemarie, who traveled from back east, very cold east, to be here with us. My dad's life, in my opinion, was a storybook filled with so many great things. Here's the short version of his life. My dad was raised by his mom Adele and father John in Maple Heights, Ohio, a suburb of Cleveland, with his two sisters, Judy and Rosemarie, and brother John. My dad followed my mom out of California very soon after high school, as my mom's parents found a great job in California. They were high school sweethearts, and shortly after coming to California, they married July 11th, 1959. And shortly after that, my brother Jeff, born in 1960, myself in 61, and Judy and John after that. They raised us 4 kids in Canoga Park until we all grew up and started our own families. They eventually moved out to Ventura quite a few years ago. My dad survived 2 open heart surgeries in his late 20s due to an undiagnosed heart defect at birth. And at age 62, he survived a heart transplant just months after my son Jason was born, and lived up until Christmas Day, 2017, when he passed away at age 78. Ironically, my mom and dad were married 59 years after their wedding in 1959. I had to do a little math to figure that one out. That was the short version of my dad's life. Since his passing, I've been going back in time, digging up pictures, looking for memories, thinking about the long version of my dad's life, trying to remember all of the happy and good times that we had together. I have to say that I am truly blessed to have had the dad that I had. My dad did so many things with us kids: baseball, coaching for many years, Boy Scout, leader, family camping, especially Carpinteria. Carpinteria Beach was one of his favorite spots to take the family. Many church-related gatherings from our church, Our Lady of the Valley in Canoga Park. My dad was always there to hear my stories and my challenges and my accomplishments. And he carried on that trait with all of his grandchildren, of which he has 7, Allie, Stephen, Jackie, Julianne, Jason, Austin, and Jessica. I was thinking about putting together a poem and realized that the word dad is so easy to make a poem. Just think of all the rhyming words: dad, mad, glad, bad, sad, had, rad, fad, lad, and pad are some of the ones. But I'm still working on the poem. I haven't finished it yet, so. My dad never got mad and angry to a point of yelling. He was very quiet. In one year when I was in baseball, t-ball, I was 6 or 7 years old. This is the story that kind of stays with me, that I can always remember. It was pretty funny. It was a very intense t-ball game, and he was with 6 and 7-year-old boys, and he was very busy getting everything organized, and I did something to make him really mad. So he took his clipboard and smacked it over my head. I mean, really hard. And it cracked in half, the clipboard. And he looked at me, and I looked at him, and we both started cracking up. My dad was a dog lover. The long line of dogs, I think, started with Ginger, then Buddy Jr., then Misty, and a cat, Rambo, and a few I can't remember. Always taking them to the park. That was one of his favorite things he did. My dad loved golf for the last 15 years or so of his life, even though he really sucked at it. But that didn't matter to him. He just loved to play. He stopped playing a while back after he ran a golf cart over a fellow player. Some of his past jobs. As a teenager, he was a soda jerk at Libby Lee Pharmacy at the corner of Libby and Lee for 2 years. He concocted root beer floats and ice cream sundaes and other such things in the front of the store. He was very proud of that job and always talked of it. He worked with his father-in-law, Walter, at some point at Withrow Die Casting in North Hollywood when Walter took the job and moved to California. And then my mom's brother Ken and grandfather Walter started their own die-cast company, which is still operating today. He came to work for them for quite a few years until he retired. Dear Dad, I know you are here with all of us listening to what we have to say. I can feel your presence. I want to say to you that you're an awesome dad, and thank you for being such a great role model. Thank you for always being there for me and teaching me in a silent way to be a good person and a great dad. Your memory will live in my heart and soul forever. I love you.
That was so beautiful, you guys. Thank you so much. Really wonderful. This is the part of our service where we invite people to come up from the floor here, and if they'd like to share a story or a memory or a thought or a feeling about Jim, please feel free to do so. There's a lot of people here. There's probably not time for everybody to share, so we'll go for about 20 minutes, and if you didn't get to share your story, then downstairs after the service there's a reception, and you'll get to connect with people and share your memories of Jim then. So I'm going to step aside, and whoever wants to be first can come on up, and then we'll share for about 20 minutes or so. Thanks.
One thing I remember about my dad the most was when I had Stephen and Alex and little ones, and I was exhausted all the time. Alex didn't sleep through the night. Stephen was very rambunctious, and when one was awake, the other one was sleeping, and they'd just switch that all the time. So Dad, as Jeff put it, was the Zen master, and I called on him often to get one of the kids to sleep, and he loved it. He couldn't make my mom upset by doing nothing because he was working for me. I had him employed. So it was one of his favorite jobs that he would come over probably on a daily basis. And he would literally snuggle up with one of the two of them, and they would be out like a light. So he was the best at just relaxing, being in the moment, and just really taught all of us just how you don't have to say anything to be strong and be heard. You can just be and love, and the strength he had was just in not saying anything, just being there all the time, just loving as strong as he loved all of us, never complaining about life. He went through it, and he found the next best thing to smile at. So I miss him a lot, but he's always here with all of us. So.
My name's David Wright. I first met Jim at Hunsinger Park, walking our dogs. I spent more time with Jelinski than I did with my wife. I went through all the dogs he had, over 20 years or so. And it's true, he loved dogs. He loved animals. A sweeter guy I never met. I used to call him Gentleman Jim, and I think that sums it up. So he will be missed, and I think of him all the time, and he'll be with us forever. So thank you.
Well, I just have to say that I always loved coming to church and seeing Barbara and Jim. Always brightened my day. But the few times that I might have been a little sad or depressed, I felt I could always go to Jim, because whatever I said, he would laugh at. I could always count on Jim. So I'd always sort of reminded myself, Chip, you're still funny. Just talk to Jim Jelinski. He'll make you feel better. And I always did. I'll miss him greatly.
Well, I got to thank Jim and Barb for a lot of the hands-on they had when I was a child growing up with Stephen being my best friend since before I could remember. As children, we used to go do these camps. When Stephen left to go to Flagstaff, I stayed here in California. I live in Simi currently, and they would take me in for these camps. And I remember as a child going to the sailing and kayaking camp that Stephen and I were partaking in as children. I think we were probably no older than probably 12 or 13 years old. And they took me in like family. Jim took me in as if I was just like Stephen. When Stephen ate, I ate, and when we came home from a long day of manning these sailboats, he would take us in and out, and then he'd let us just be at home and relax, and didn't make us go out and do, any more excruciating activities after being sunburned on these boats all day long. But for that, I really thank him for that, and I thank Barb for that as well. Thank you guys for everything that you've given me as a child, and allowing me to see my best friend, and allowing us for our friendship to continue to grow. Thank you.
Well, you know what I'm going to talk about. Jim had a few health issues. We all know about that. But one was he had something removed from the top of his head, and he wore a yarmulke. At least it appeared that way. So as a practitioner, we sat back there in the back, and he walked by, and I couldn't help but, because he is a character, as Chip alluded to earlier, and we all know his laugh. And I just looked at him, and I knew he was from Cleveland. I said, well, there he is, the rabbi from Cleveland. And after that, that was his name with me. And he would, like Chip alluded to, he would always have a laugh for you. He was so kind, so gentle. And I remember him coming to the men's group when we had it here. And then our friendship just grew from there. And we've been to your home, we shared things, his love of animals, and I'm gonna miss his kindness and his character and his laughter and his twinkle in his eye.
So one of the most fond memories I had of my grandpa was about 3 years ago in my freshman year at college. we came to California for spring break to get away, and we always made it a thing to go golfing. And you want to know somebody's bad at golf? I could throw the club farther than I could hit the ball. So I would always lose to him by an embarrassing amount. So I had this one idea. Do you know what? Let's take him mini golfing. and throughout this, through all the comments he would make, you know, why the hell is there a damn windmill in the middle of this course, Stephen? But at the end of it all, I still lost. But it was moments like this where he was so much in the now, and it just really got you to appreciate what you were doing, and that's something that I'll always be thankful for.
Hey, Barb. My name's Brian. I lived across the street from Barb and Jim for a while, and gosh, I miss that guy. What a great guy. I've got these two little boys. Right now they're 6 and 9, but they love Barb and Jim. We'd get home and they just run across the street, barge inside their house, and they just loved him. He was such a patient guy, and besides the sweatpants and fedora, the memory that I wanted to share was, I don't know what it was, but you guys were working on the house, and Jim was outside, and I heard all this yelling. I'm like, what's going on over here? So I sat back for a little while and watched, and I think you were inside the house with the ceiling fan, and Jim was out at the breaker panel outside, and he'd flip a switch, and, is that it? And you hear yelling from the inside, and, huh? You couldn't hear a damn thing. It'd go over and over. Is that it? What? And then at the end of it, he's just, couldn't hear it. He couldn't hear anything. He's like, I can't hear a damn thing. But yeah, I miss Jim.
I guess we're complete with the sharing for now, but if you do have a special story or a memory that you'd like to share, please do attend the reception downstairs after the service and find someone in the family or a friend and talk about it, because it's good for all of us. It's helpful to everybody here. Now we have some music from Austin Jelinski, so look forward to that. So thank you, Austin. That was beautiful. And you composed that, correct? It's called The Gift? Wonderful. Really lovely. Thank you. Really was a gift for all of us and for Jim. So we appreciate that. And so we have already today celebrated the earthly life of Jim and talked about some of the wonderful things about him. And I really appreciate everybody that spoke and that everybody that held a memory in their heart. And of course, the music. I have my own memories of Jim. I saw him, as many of you did, as such a kind and a sweet and a good-natured man. He was always so kind and wonderful to me. I know that he loved his family very much, and he loved our center and our church very much too. He was a regular attender and very active in the center here. A lot of you talked about his laugh, and to me he had a great laugh, but he also had a great cry. I mean, I would stand at the back of the church and he would often just fling himself into my arms and say how much he loved me and start crying. Particularly when we did singing services, when we would do chanting services, right? He loved the chanting services. And it was so touching to see a man that in touch with his feelings and so open about sharing them with me. And it really made me feel good. And I suspect that he did that wherever he went, that he just was honest and open and a beautiful soul that touched other souls in many, many places, in many ways. I spoke the other day a little bit with Barb and Judy about what Jim loved, and of course, animals and dogs were the first things that came up. And then he mentioned children and grandchildren, but or they mentioned children and grandchildren. But I guess some of you might know this, but I had forgotten it, although he did tell me in the past that he loved polka dancing, that he was an expert polka dancer. And in fact, I think I even polka'd with him briefly once. And you mentioned that he loved games like golf, but also baseball, and he loved Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune. Most of all, I think, he loved his beautiful wife, Barb. And they met in high school, and their first date was, she couldn't remember whether it was 8th or 9th grade, but it was around that time. So they were pretty young when they met. And their first date was to go on a hayride together. It's the good old days, right? And as someone mentioned that Jim moved to California because his beloved Barb moved here. I asked when I was speaking with Barb and Judy what they learned from Jim, and they said some of the greatest things that they learned from him, although there was probably too many to name, but they learned that no one is a stranger. Jim could talk to anyone. And they also learned that strength is found in different ways. It's not always the vision of strength that we hold, but it's also found in kindness and in gentleness. And they just remembered and reminisced with me how Jim was such a shining example of strength his whole life. And particularly, his strength came out around his illnesses, because they said no matter what came up, he never complained. And I have to say that even when I saw him in the hospital just a few days before he passed away, he was smiling. And when we joined hands to pray, there was an extra sort of I love you going on in there. So there was a beauty to him and a great lovingness that I think was the source of his strength. So we've talked a lot about who Jim was and celebrated who Jim was in his earthly bodies. But of course, all of the details that we've shared and all of the details that we haven't shared, all of the details of being here, that's not all who Jim is. There's so much more to a person's life than all of the duties and the details and the roles and relationships that we have. And we can't be defined by mere words or defined by our life in this body, because we are not our bodies, we are not our memories, we are not our experiences, we are not our loves, we are not our failures, we are not our successes. We are, you are, I am, Jim is, life itself, seeking to know itself. And life is so vast and so unknowable to us and constantly changing. When we're in this earthly form, it's hard to imagine what we really are, but we are so much more than what we think we are. We are ever-changing energy, And it's impossible for our essence or our energy to die. So Jim has only changed form. He has only assumed a new form. And in the words of the spiritual teacher Yogananda, our real self, the soul, is immortal. We may sleep for a little while in that change that we call death, but we can never be destroyed. We exist, and that existence is eternal. The wave comes to the shore and then goes back to the sea. It is not lost. It becomes one with the ocean, or returns again in the form of another wave. This body has come, and it will vanish, but the soul essence within it will never cease to exist. Nothing can terminate the eternal consciousness that we are. And that is the spiritual truth. Another truth is that there is a certain earthbound reality to loss. You will feel loss as you learn to speak about him in the past tense, and as you think of something that you'd love to share with them, and then you remember that he's not physically here to share with them. My recommendation is that you share it anyway, because he's all around us, and as you said, he's within us, right? But whatever we feel, whenever we feel the loss, that's a call for self-compassion and for forgiveness and for understanding. We understand that grief is a process and that what we call death is simply a transition, but transitions all the same challenge us. And so in the spirit of understanding, we are gentle with ourselves and we support one another. And most of all, we remember that our feelings of loss or our feelings of sadness are simply evidence of great love. We feel great sadness because we have loved greatly. And the truth behind that is that love never dies. The Dalai Lama says that death is not failure, it is completion, it is transition. And really, all of the perennial great world religions, their esoteric essence, they teach that death is not final. It is said that death is like changing rooms, and when you go from this room to the next room, you don't leave yourself behind, you go where you're going. In this church, in one of our curriculums that we teach, we talk about how death is like a birth, and just as we all came into this world, greeted by light and welcoming hands, I believe that we can trust that Jim exited this world greeted by light and loving hands, and probably in his case, dog licks as well. The other thing that teaches us, even if we're not spiritual or religious at all, that death is not an ending, is that I think that there's a core part of ourselves that can't imagine not being here. You know, and some people would say that that is denial of death, and that's immature. But perhaps that really is the truest part of who we are. The part within us that knows that we are eternal, and the part within us that knows that we will live forever in the infinite as the infinite. Again, from Yogananda, he says, "Though the ordinary man looks upon death with dread and sadness, those who have gone before know it as a wondrous experience of peace and freedom." And so let us together this afternoon trust that Jim is in a good place of peace and freedom and having a wondrous experience. That in this lifetime, our bodies, his body, became too frail and too small for his immense soul that had so much more to do. We trust that he has moved on, that he has merged with the divine, that he is reunited with loved ones. Several of the people that I spoke to from Jim's family, particularly Barb and Judy, said that it's the biggest dog party in heaven right now because Jim is there. And that whatever he loved, he's doing it now. Some will call this heaven, some call it rebirth. We can't know what heaven is. But what we do know is that there is much fullness in Jim, much kindness, much determination, much love, and that because the goodness and the fullness and the essence of who we are never dies, Jim is living his fullness in another form. So it's up to us to remember that. And in remembering that, we honor Jim's memory. We recognize their fullness in a new form, and then, to really honor them, we commit to ourselves living fully, the practice of living fully. Yes, we can still feel loss. Yes, we can still grieve. We can move through the process of mourning, but we recognize again that that is love in disguise. We lose deeply when we love deeply. It's just the way life is. And we use this feeling of loss to remind us of what is important. And really, gatherings like this, transition, death, whatever it is you want to call it, memorials, it's really a reminder for all of us, for the living in this body, living in the earthly body, to teach us to love and to live fully. Philosopher Ernest Holmes, the founder of this denomination that we practice here in this spiritual center, he said, "The soul is the one triumphant, indestructible, and unconquerable thing you possess. Shot from the invisible into this experience, it constitutes our great reality. But why wait for physical death to enjoy and experience your immortal being? Do not prepare to die. Prepare to live. Whether you are 10 years old or 100, there is no death. It is impossible for you to die. Stop trying to die and learn to live." We honor Jim's life every time that we choose to live fully, freely, and abundantly. We honor Jim each time we use his passing to inspire us to reach for any of the qualities that he embodied, such as love, such as kindness, such as great laughter, such as a sense of humor. And we honor Jim every time we choose to love one another. I asked Barb, as we were planning the service, what she wanted people to know. And she said that she is so grateful for the people that have come on this journey with them. That would mean all of you, and probably some people that aren't here today as well. Each person that has come on this journey has helped them grow. Each person has been a blessing. And she has been grateful for everything. And she knows also that Jim was grateful for his whole life. And what I want Barb most to know is that you were an amazing and devoted wife and caregiver, and that you have amazing, beautiful children and grandchildren and dogs and sisters-in-law and anybody that I might be leaving out. That you and Jim, together and alone, are both such an amazing blessing, and I thank you for loving him so deeply and taking such good care of him. Thank you. So Barb told me a story about Jim from a long time ago. And she said that they used to visit Yosemite as a family, and there was a trail that he really had his eye on, a trail that he liked. It was a trail that had a lot of switchbacks. And prior to his cardiac surgery, he couldn't manage it. He wanted to do it. It was a goal, but he couldn't do it. After his heart transplant, they came back to Yosemite, and Jim mastered that trail. He did it slowly, but he climbed it. And I imagine that right now, he is experiencing similar adventures, all his life wanting to do something, particularly in the later years when his body was becoming more and more frail, wanting this goal, wanting to do something, wanting to achieve something, wanting to be free. I know that right here and right now, all of Jim's dreams are made manifest in this new life. Let us celebrate that together, and let us pray. We turn together within, and we breathe in and out into this sacred moment, into this time that we have spent together honoring this beautiful soul. And we know that the consciousness of this time that we have spent together, this love that we have shown a spotlight upon, that this reverence and this tenderness and this remembrance, that this all is within us always. And so we commit now to turn our attention to this love, to this tenderness, to this remembrance, and recognize that we have this great power and great gift and great love within us always. And so I know that in the coming days, weeks, months, years, that we remember Jim and Jim remembers us. That we are blessed by his presence eternally as we bless each other's presence. And that most importantly, we know that Jim is full, free, and abundant. And as we know that for Jim, we know it for ourselves as we use the gift of this time together to remind us to live fully, freely, and abundantly in love, as love always. And so I give thanks. I give thanks for this sacred gathering. I give thanks for the life of Jim. I give thanks for all of his loved ones. I give thanks for everyone here today. And with a heart that is so filled with gratitude, I say thank you, Spirit. Thank you, God. Thank you, love. And I release these words into the divine mystery. And together we say, and so it is. And so it is, and so we let it be. Let us take one more moment of meditation as we listen to the final song, and then you're all invited to a reception downstairs.
Memories surround me, but sadness has found me. I'd do anything for more time. Never before has someone meant more, and I can't get you out of my mind. There's so much that I don't understand, but I know you're dancing with the angels. For the Father and Son, your heart will be heard in your unspoken words through generations to come. There's so much that I don't understand, but I know you're dancing with the angels, walking in new light. A short time, I'm gonna stand up, shout out, sing hallelujah. And one day I'll see you again, and we'll be dancing with the angels, walking in new light, and dancing with the angels. Heaven will fill our eyes. Dancing with the angels. Dancing with the